What's up guys, Tim from Heavy Metal Off-Road here. Today we're gonna do a little project on the Bronco. So we have our 94 Ford Bronco. It's done up quite nicely, but always a work in progress. And today we are doing an AC delete. What we've got here is a Doorman 34150 AC bypass pulley. And out of the box, it looks just like this. So you've got a plastic pulley, pre-assembled, with a cast aluminum bracket that matches the mounting pattern of the stock compressor. So this is gonna mount like this in place of that. Before anything at all, go ahead and do an evacuation on the AC system and get all of the refrigerant out of there. All right, so why are we getting rid of these components? Well, for one, I have natural air conditioning. Two, doing some weight reduction and simplification of the engine bay and electronics. So the compressor's gonna go this line here, this line down here, condenser, the evaporator. I'm actually gonna pull the wiring out from the entire loom. Here we go. I'm gonna start by removing everything regarding the intake that's in the way. Normally everything would come through here and stop right here under the hood. That's all gone, but I have my own things to take care of. Start by removing the intake. And we're going to need to remove the remote reservoirs for the coilovers. Remove the intake hoses. And don't forget to disconnect the crankcase vent. Remove this harness from the front of the compressor and this harness from the rear of the compressor. Pull the engine belt off. All right, on the back of the compressor, go ahead and take a 10mm socket and begin to pull off this line. Remember, make sure that your compressor and AC system is evacuated and there's no line pressure. Remove the hose. Use your 10mm to remove the 4 bolts that hold the compressor to the engine bracket. And pull the compressor. Okay, now we have space to put the new pulley and bracket. Okay, moving on here. Go ahead and grab a couple of adjustable wrenches and disconnect the line going to the condenser. Follow the routing. And here, the bracket goes all the way up to this big guy here, down into the evaporator. So go ahead and take a big adjustable wrench and remove that sucker right there. For those of you who've seen this right here on the back of your compressor and wonder what that is a pressure relief valve, and that is set to 450 psi. Continuing over to the evaporator, we will go ahead and remove this fitting here. Next, we'll go ahead and remove the electrical connector. Crack it loose here. Okay, this is the part we're actually removing here. Use your thumb, pull back on it. There you go. Over by the battery, we have the last line going to the condenser. I've got myself a 19mm and a 16mm. All right, you're gonna wanna go behind here. That is a 5/16 right there, and that's gonna take off this line. You take an 11mm and remove that. Take your 5/16 and remove this right here. And then you've got another 11mm right there. There's 2 more bolts here, 5/16. This bracket right here is bolted to the air box, so we'll go ahead and loosen those. And then the strap around the evaporator can come up and out of the way. Now this bracket comes up and out of the way. Now that we loosen that 5/16 bolt for this line here, we can pull that out of the way, go ahead and bend it a little bit, and now you have access to this 11mm. Now here's a view of what's going on. Everything removed. Much more access to view everything now. Next, go ahead and remove the grill. There's also 1 more bolt that you can remove. Now we'll go ahead and unbolt anything that's in the way, such as this cooler. Here's another reason why I'm removing the AC system, is because I can gain about 2 inches up to this frame point here, so I can move my winch back just a little bit more, because I want a very, very slim, tucked in profile for when I do my next bumper idea. Remove the 2 10mm bolts here and here. Because the truck's old, I've had to pry this piece off right here to be able to separate it. Remove the center support. This 10mm bolt here, reveal the other 10mm bolt. There's one right smack dab in the middle. If I recall, there was some kind of something here, so unbolt that, and then you're gonna want to unbolt this bottom 10mm bolt. Alright, so this should just pull up and out. Now there's a 10mm down here and a 10mm down there. Now that this thing's loose, we're gonna have to pull it out the front, which means we're gonna loosen up the radiator. Let's loosen this bolt, 10mm, and behind the radiator cap, 10mm. Now that the radiator is loose, there's no bolts on the bottom, it just has some slits that it fits in, and so this thing can just pull it right up like this. We should just need to be able to lift this up and forward only as much as we need to get the condenser out. Go ahead and put the radiator back. There's a little bit of adjustability here to slide from driver to passenger. So really make sure that the fan shroud is centered around the fan. Okay, with the radiator put back, you can now see how much room we gained here. Plenty of room to move that winch back. Okay, so we went ahead and put on the center support, and we're gonna put our hood latch back on. I followed all of the dirt and clean line marks best I could to get it back to its exact original state. Be prepared to do a little bit of hood adjustment. So I've set everything up here. The cooler for the power steering, line everything up here. Bracket on, lift adjusted, grill's ready to go on. Back up top here. I'm not sure what size fitting this is, but you can get kind of a plug for that. At least for now, it's capped off. The kit also comes with this little bit of hardware. According to the instructions here, is find the right bushing and press it right into the hole. Double check the bolts they give you and make sure they thread in. Slightly disappointing. I tried pressing one of those collars or bushings in here, and looks like it's actually bigger than the diameter of the hole. That's obviously not a round shape. This one's round, but it's probably too small. So I measured the bushings, and they are 7/16. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill those out. So I was able to put these in here after drilling these out to 7/16. Hammer these in instead of needing a press. Applied bolts, they're 10.9 grade, so they're metric, and a 13mm works really well. Make sure that all the mounting surfaces here are clean. Start threading them in. They didn't supply any kind of washer, and I don't really like that. I'm gonna put a couple of 5/16 actually works really well. Go ahead and tighten those down to 20 foot-pounds. The instruction sheet also says you can take this bolt off, put a washer behind the pulley, which will ride on the bearing, and then put this bolt back on, and that will allow you to push the pulley out towards the front of the engine if necessary. Everything is bolted up, torqued down. Wow, look how much room there is. I might even put a washer here and the other 2 bolts just to give it maybe a little more tension. Fun fact, the Ford 5 liter and the 5.8 liter tensioners are automatic and they do not have a tension indicator. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put the shocks back on, take care of all that. We're on top of the blower here. If you've ever wondered what this is your vacuum control motor, and it controls the AC dampener inlet door. This rotational piece here, it's a shaft that goes down to the door and it will open and close based off of vacuum input from the knob on the inside. So since we don't have AC anymore and we don't need to recirculate air, we're just gonna take off these 2 bolts here, 5/16. After a bit of research from the Ford Helm manual, it's the manufacturer's manual, for the amount of integration here, I really don't feel like finding a way to remove this whole assembly, because this is part of just the air ducting and everything behind the dash. And these 2 parts are essentially one. We are going to cut this AC line and not look back. Let's do a quick overview and admiration of what's going on under the hood of the Bronco. Here is an overview of what we got rid of. We have the condenser, the compressor, the main AC line going to the compressor, coming out of the airbox, the line, bracket for the evaporator, vacuum control unit, and some miscellaneous hardware. And that all weighs in at 29.25 pounds. And considering the bracket and the pulley here for the delete is about 2 pounds, you saved about 27.25 pounds. It's time to fire this baby up and see how she does. There's a little belt squeak, and you can see that there's some belt slap, so it's definitely not having definitely doesn't have enough tension. So what I'm going to do, as I mentioned earlier, is right under there I'm going to put a washer with 3 bolts, and that should tension it a little bit more. So I have some 3/8 washers that are about 1/8 of an inch thick. Those are going to work really well. So there's the extra washer on all 3 bolts, and it actually made that little bit made quite a significant difference in the amount of tension. That gives us plenty of clearance here. Yeah, so that's the AC delete on the Bronco up through the F350 with the 302 or the 351 5 liter / 5.8 liter engine. Not too much money into this project, and it's a lot more simplistic. I would take care of the wiring a little bit later. I'm not going to do that in this video, but snip, use some heat shrink tube, crimp the ends with a pair of pliers so the ends aren't exposed, wrap it up with black tape. I just like clearing a lot of wires out of this thing, and it's just Makes it much more clean, simple. Of course, I have the Ford factory manual, so it's easy to follow if you can read schematics. Anyway, thanks again for watching. HeavyMetalOffroad.com, Facebook, Instagram, and until next time, grab life by the rocks.